Hi everyone, I'm James Thompson, a Senior Solutions Architect at AWS, and today I'll be talking about the redesign of the Amazon Cognito Identity Pools console experience and give you a demo of using identity pools within a web application. For those who aren't familiar with the service, Amazon Cognito Identity Pools is a directory of federated identities that you can exchange for AWS credentials. Identity pools can generate temporary AWS credentials for the users of your app, whether they've signed in or not. With AWS Identity and Access Management, or IAM roles, you can choose the level of permission that you want to grant to your users, who can start out as guests and retrieve assets that you keep in AWS services, and they can sign in through Amazon Cognito user pools or a third-party identity provider to unlock access to assets that you make available to registered users. Amazon Cognito offers two AWS Management Console experiences for identity pools. Currently, you can choose between the original and the new console experience, but by the time you watch this video, we may have made the permanent switch to the new version. As you can see, the new design provides a list of all of your identity pools along with some high-level information such as the pool ID and creator date. By clicking on an identity pool link, you're taken to a new view that shows all of the pool information. You can see the identity pool ID, AWS resource name, the user access level that's been configured, and this can be authenticated or guest. And there are getting started resources that will help explain steps such as AWS SDK setup and authenticating users into an identity pool. We can see top-level user statistics, including how many identities have been created this month, the total identities in the pool, and the percentage of unauthenticated versus authenticated identities. And there are also some graphs here that show the authentication methods and identities over time. The identity browser allows us to search for a specific identity so that we can see the created time and if there are any linked logins. A linked login will show which identity provider the user has authenticated with. You can also click on the identity ID to see if there are any related datasets. A dataset is a group of records, each with a key value pair that you want to associate with the user. When you collect information about a user in your app, the Cognito Sync SDK can push it to a dataset. The SDK can then be used to distribute that information to all instances of your app for that user on different devices. You can also manage datasets here in the console. In the user access section, you can see which IAM role will be used for authenticated users, and by clicking on the link, you'll be taken to the AWS IAM console so you can view details such as its permissions policy, and you can see which identity providers have been configured for the identity pool. In this example, we have a Cognito user pool configured, and at the bottom of this section, you can see if guest user access has been enabled and the details of the IAM role used for unauthenticated access. Identity pool properties allow you to enable basic or classic authentication. This is a legacy feature that allows your application to interact directly with the AWS Security Token Service to obtain credentials to call AWS services. In contrast, the enhanced flow reduces the amount of API requests that your app needs to make and removes the need for additional logic in your app to select an appropriate IAM role. And you can also set tag values for the identity pool in this section. Here you can turn on push synchronization, which enables Cognito Sync to use Amazon's simple notification service for user dataset change notifications. You can subscribe the different versions of your application to Amazon SNS to receive these updates across devices. Whenever the Cognito Sync client or your app adds or updates user data, you can have it sent to an Amazon Kinesis data stream where you can aggregate the user data for reporting and analytics. And finally, Cognito Events lets you trigger an AWS Lambda function in response to Cognito Sync events, such as user data changes. If you're new to Amazon Cognito Sync, we'd recommend using AWS AppSync instead. Like Cognito Sync, AppSync is a service for synchronizing application data across devices. It enables user data like app preferences or game state to be synchronized, and it extends these capabilities by allowing multiple users to synchronize and collaborate in real time on shared data. Now we'll jump into a demo to see how you can use identity pools in an application. Here we have a very simple single-page app that's been developed using the AWS Amplify framework, and it's hosted on S3 and delivered through a CloudFront CDN endpoint. The site uses S3 for storing images, and here on the home page we have some public images that any visitor to the site can view. The images are stored in an S3 bucket, and access to that bucket is restricted to users who have received an unauthenticated role from the associated identity pool. When we click on the Private tab, we're prompted to sign in. So here we provide our user pool credentials, which authenticates us against that user pool, which returns some authentication tokens to the app. What happens next is the app makes a request to a Cognito identity pool with the user's tokens, which swaps these for an AWS IAM role, an authenticated role that we've previously set up, which allows the user to access their own images that are stored in S3. If I log out and log back in again as a different user, you can see the images are unique to each user, and that's down to the role that's being provided to the user once they've logged in. In this video, we've looked at the new Amazon Cognito Identity Pool experience, all of the configuration options available within the user interface, and a real-world example of how you can integrate identity pools into an application. If you'd like to learn more about Amazon Cognito, check out one of our blogs or the Amazon Cognito documentation, which are linked to below.